I'm so grateful that you're allowing me to just talk.
Come on, man.
And I love what you did with this thing. I was watching all the, because I'm fearful too. So I was watching all the interviews that you've done with Bo and Kevin, and man, there's just like you found a gap. Not a whole lot of places a guy like me can come and talk my truth, or Bo talk his truth and sit down with another cop. I think is phenomenal with you. I'm not just kissing your ass. I think this is really special. I like how small it is also. Anyway, what do you got to say? I know you do your little intros.
There ain't got to be anything like that. I think the first thing I want to say is from what you said as soon as you got out of that car.
Yeah.
Can you lead me in a prayer?
Yeah, all right, definitely.
About this conversation and what we're trying to achieve?
First off, I'm prepared to go every which way.
Let's go,
yeah,
man.
I think that it's my duty now. Like when I think about what my life has become and what it is now, like what my purpose is now, I need to be useful. And when I look at this Me Too environment, there's not a whole lot of dudes that are taking accountability. I fucked up bad, like crash and burn type shit, hurt a lot of people. And I'm fully aware of that, and I'm gonna owe for the rest of my life. And I also don't have that feeling about the woman who's accused me all this shit like I did in the beginning. When it first landed, I thought, man, there was I wanted to hit Twitter and be like, look, I got receipts, this, that, but this, but not that, but this, but not that. And the reality is, all of that shit is unimportant. The reality is that she saved my fucking life, dude.
Wow.
Yeah. So she's like some kind of sage, or I don't know. She's a saint for me, because had she not intervened in my life and not created the avenue for me to experience ego death, I'd either have a really mediocre existence or I'd be dead in full. And I had no love in my life. I had no purpose in my life. My whole purpose, as you know, was just craft. It was just, I'm gonna be good at this thing, and that's all that I have. The only thing I care about in life is being a good actor. And that's such a vapid, shallow existence. And three emotions that I toggled between, which was I would feel anxiety, depression, and excitement. And I thought excitement was joy, and I thought lack of depression was serenity,
peace. Yeah.
And I had no spiritual life. I had I was bankrupt spiritually. I thought my whole spirituality was this craft, because other than smoking weed and drinking, the only spiritual experience I ever felt was on set. That's the only time my perspective would shift and change, and it's the only time I ever felt useful. And so I'm on a spiritual growth path. I'm on an excavation. I'm picking it up, cleaning it up, putting it back. I didn't just hurt that woman. The kind of shame my wife has to walk around with, the pain that came to the people I was working with creatively. Even I built this, me and Bo built something really special downtown, and all them kids, I just failed a lot of people. And so when I say I'm gonna owe, it's not just her. I owe a lot of people. And so the reason I wanted to do this, and the reason why it felt like celestial mathematics when you hit me up, was it's not a lot of places I can go talk, period, And I guess old me would have looked at this like, oh, well, this is an opportunity for you to speak your piece. But really the only thing I want to do is give dudes who fuck up hope.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What can this achieve? Who can this touch? Victim, perpetrator, someone lost, someone who's trying to be found.
Yeah, all that.
Who on that path? Pain is an adhesive, bro. If you've been through it, you can connect to people, period, end of story. The first thing I just think look, man, I haven't seen you in a long time, bro. And I want to talk about that.
Yeah.
The first thing I just need to ask you, man, is I need to ask you about your child.
Yeah.
I need to ask you about your baby, bro.
Yeah.
Yo, man, tell me about your baby.
I mean, she is the most dynamic spark of life and most magical. It's a game changer, dog. You would always talk about your kid, and I was like, yeah, well, I've had a dog, as though them as though these loves are anywhere near what you experience when you have a kid. But this was all tied in too. It came at a time when, me and my girl been in love for a long time, but I didn't really know it. I didn't really know what love was till all this shit hit the fan and she was still around. I thought she was in love with me because of what I could offer. I didn't know that when I had shit jack off fuck all nothing to offer, she would still love me. So I didn't really know what love was, right? That's one. And out of this like newfound discovery of real love in my life, this kid, you know, and I'm not gonna pretend like I done figured it all out. It's such a mystery, you know.
What scares you?
What scares me is like, and if nobody tells you about the first 3 weeks, you know, the first 3 weeks, man. I remember changing the diaper.
Yeah.
You know, I've been hanging out with monks for 9 months, and I came out of monastery, and I've been in rehab for 3 months, and I've been working, you know, been outside for a while, and so I thought I had like things dialed in, like I could press the pause button. But when you're changing a diaper, and you change it and then you put it back on, she shits again. And then you change it again and she shits again. And it's 3 in the morning, you ain't slept for 4 days. And you're on the third iteration of shit, and you're sitting there at the table and you change it one more time and you say to yourself, if you shit one more time, I'm gonna jump out the fucking window. Like, I'm done, right? And you're looking at your kid and you're just thinking, how am I gonna get through this? And you put the 4th diaper on and she doesn't shit. It feels like a miracle. It feels like God is hugging you. Like, I got you, bro. So I don't know if I'm infusing a bunch of stuff, but there's some kind of incredible genius in my child, but she's testing me and she's forcing me to give up on me.
Yeah. That's right.
Which is what I need.
Way more important.
Yeah, I mean,
way bigger.
Obviously way more important, but it also feels like some kind of weird reset button.
For sure.
Like, I know that I'm never gonna be the dude I was in front of this woman, you know? And I know that I'm never gonna treat my wife the way that I treated her around this woman. It's almost like having the ultimate parole officer. Yeah. It's like the ultimate probation officer. I've never looked down on having a probation officer. I need somebody to keep me accountable. Because freedom without guidelines and limitations is fucking madness. You know, if I strip you naked and throw you in the ocean, you'll be free, but you won't enjoy it. You know, I need guidance. And my kid is serving as some kind of ultimate, like
North Star?
Yeah. For sure, North Star, but more than that, first of all, my kid is so fucking joyful. Like, she's just always, I've been around doctors, and maybe all doctors say this, but like, I've been around doctors saying like, this is the most joyful kid I've ever been around. Right. You know, she's raised in complete love, and my wife is such a good mother. She's a part of a new purpose that I didn't have. You know, I was living for myself, and when you're holding a baby, like, baby don't care about none of your shit, you know.
Like, what do you think being a good dad is? What do you gotta bring to the table?
I'm honest.
Yep.
I'm loyal. I'm willing. I'm open.
Curious.
Super curious, and I'm learning how to be a man of principles.
Give voice to what you're scared of and what you're worried about being a dad, and what you think you need to focus on, and what you're worried about with your relationship with her for the future.
I'm not worried about much anymore. Like, I don't live in fear. I don't have a bunch of worry like that.
What do you need to work on?
Yeah, there's a lot I need to work on. First off, just in terms of having a daughter and knowing your daughter is one day gonna search your name in a search engine and see that, you know, you are a deplorable, disgusting piece of shit. And that shit hits, you know? And so I have from now until she's literate to create a relationship with her where she knows me more than this idea who I am in the public, you know?
When that hits, like you said, because it's funny, man. I just went through something like that with my kids, because my kids can fucking read now. You know what I mean? And what's there, man? Do you see an opportunity in that?
Yeah.
What is it?
I picture for myself a Christmas with a bunch of people I done helped.
There you go.
That's what I envision for myself. It's not, you know, I used to judge my worth by the films and stuff, and like, I think about my Christmases during that whole path. It was just so fucking solitary and lonely. Or it'd be like this new girl and that I mean, it was always like some like very intangible, vapid, no intrinsic value, nobody that could, like, I imagine that there's dudes I'm working with now that I got 597 days of this program I'm in, and I got monks at my house. You know, I look around sometimes at my house even now and I think, what? Yeah. Like, how? You know, how did this happen? Yeah. And I think it's the relationships. I think my daughter will be able to when it does come time for her to be able to assess who her father is, she'll see a man who failed, was a sinner, was honest about it,
That's it.
took accountability for it, and then made course corrections.
That's it.
Changed, and then gave his life to something bigger than himself, and found solace in a program of principles, service, love. You know, that's where I'm aiming at. So I think it'll be a Christmas one day where she just wakes up and goes, damn, Dad's got a lot of friends. Who are these people? And my mommy will say, like, you know, Dad had a hand to play in, like, these people finding the same thing he found.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm hoping for, you know?
Not if, but when she falls, because everybody does, man.
Sure.
You're going to be able to talk about it with her, and you're going to be able to be there with her.
The reason I've always connected to you is because, you know, you have depth and weight, because you done fell on your fucking face, you know,
Definitely.
and then got back up and kept it moving. And, you know, this is people who haven't gone through that. They don't have depth and weight to the message that they have to share. They can tell you all about what to do and how you're supposed to do it, but very few people have the life experience. And this child is a big part of that. You know, there's a lot of miracles that have taken place in my life just in this short period of time that takes me out of this belief phase into, like, oh, I can touch it.
Solid.
Yeah, this feels very real.
Solid.
You know? And I played with faith. You know, when we did Fury, I was toiling with faith, but it was all like the purpose was performative.
What was it's about intentionality.
Right.
Right? To be good in a movie.
Right.
Not to save yourself or save somebody else.
And when I'd
Save your
fucked
daughter.
up in the past, it's like, you know, you get a call from Brad Pitt, what fuck up? You know, there wasn't no calls this time.
Yeah. Yeah.
My mother didn't talk to me this time, you know?
Yeah.
Nobody, all my friends became acquaintances.
The antithesis of being a friend is walking away. I am not going to walk away. Like, I am always going to love you. I am always going to support you. That being said, the things that, you know, this person said, like, I can't fuck with that.
For
and
sure.
like what you said, you were right, man. Like, I fucking hurt people in my life, you know? Like, I know what that is. I know what it's like to be in that valley. I know what it's like to be left behind. I don't know what it's like, you know, to put my hands on a woman, or for a woman to say I put my hands on her. And that's something you know, like, but no matter what the case is, my job as your friend is to, in whatever way you allow me to, or you allow me to be a part of that process, is to make sure, one, you never do it again, make sure, two, that you're in a healthy process, and number three, that I'm a support system for why you're going through that. So I guess my question with that is, man, is like, where, I mean, you answered it a little bit, but where are you, and what do you, for people who support you and love you, like, what do you want to say to them?
Yeah, I mean, I got amends to make. I got a long list of people that I need to make amends to. And so what I want to say to those people is, I get it. You know, it doesn't seem, you know, when it first hit, it was like, you know, I wanted to air it out and talk about specifics, and, like, none of it really matters. You know, I hurt that woman, you know, and in the process of doing that, I hurt many other people, and many other people before that woman. You know, I was living my life, I was a pleasure-seeking, selfish, self-centered, dishonest, inconsiderate, fearful human being, and I was operating on a survival instinct. I wasn't operating as a friend. I didn't actually, all my loves and friendships were transactional. You know, I fucked with you because we worked together, and I experienced great pleasure in that working situation. You know, when I look back at the friendships, people who dipped or don't talk to me, these were also part of the same kind of transactional relationships. I didn't actually understand what love was. You know, I didn't know what friendship was. I'm not trying to do a pity party thing. I was raised very specifically in my father would tell me stuff like, you know, your life is your life, son. You know, if you want to have a good life, you got to work real hard. You got to get into a good school. You got to get a good job. That'll lead to a good relationship. You have a kid and you put that kid in a good school, and, you know, it's all up to you. And so that kind of, it forced me into a position in my life where I was God. I was the person who was making shit happen, and I was using people like I was in a laboratory measuring shit, and like quite controlling. I mean, you know how I am on set too. You know, the way I was operating on set was, the actor is the poet. You know, like you're in a solitary, you're on your own like journey. That's a bunch of nonsense, but this is what I was living in. It's the shit I came up with, you know. The actors that I looked up to, the art that I was inspired by, they moved like the actor is the poet. I was moving like in my life like I was that way.
Right.
That does something to the way you operate in the world.
Yeah.
Some people are attracted to it because that confidence is attractive, and it feels comforting to be around somebody who you think knows something. It's attractive. It calms my own insecurity to be around a person who is fully acquainted and acclimated to their craft or their mission in life. When somebody's really confident in something, it's nice to be around that energy because it feels like guidance. It feels like you can lean on it.
Yeah, they got to figure it out.
They got to figure it out, right? So I get why I empathize with why my way of doing shit was attractive then. And I remember who you were on that set. And I remember how fearful, how deeply insecure, you know, and
For sure.
and the way that you were moving on that show specifically.
For sure.
And the yearnings for David to hit you with certain compliments and shit. Like, you know, you needed validation. From him,
For sure.
from us, from Kevin, more so from Kevin, you know, and like the military dudes, you constantly needed them to co-sign all your shit all the time. And I empathize with that, but that's not who I was. I was not that way in life. The way that I felt about craft and life in general was, I don't give a fuck what you think, you know? I don't care what you think about me. I had come from an environment with very little cheerleading going on, and so I created a sort of survival instinct where I would cut people out, you know, and minimize opinions. And the way that I would do that is I had to believe that my opinion was greater than everybody else's opinion around me. I remember talking shit to Spielberg. I mean, there was no director who ever directed me, you know, and I used to be proud of that. This is what I mean, like the things that I looked up to and romanticized was I came up on a certain kind of music, a certain kind of culture, boss shit. You know, the guys I looked up to were not asking you what you thought. I thought there was something sexy and punk rock about like these islands, these men who were islands.
Untouchable.
Yeah.
Is that possible? Is it possible to be that?
It's nonsense. Yeah. It's just not real. It's fiction. It's not a real thing.
It's a blanket, right? I mean, it's armor.
I listen to Mickey Rourke interviews and I think, damn, bro, it's a sad boy. You scared man. You're so fucking scared, you know? And there's a lot of this tough guy armor shit, and I get it, you know? And I love Mickey Rourke, you know? He gives me hope. When you see a dude go for 12 years no craft and then come out and do the wrestler. A guy like me who's in my position looks up to shit like that. It gives me hope. It makes me feel inspired. Like, all right, if I'm patient for 12 years, maybe one day. Guys like me in my position need stories like that. And simultaneously, I listen to his interviews and I go, there's no evolution here. You're still shitting on Tom Cruise, bro. Why?
Right.
And it's insecurity, you know, and I was that way. I was so competitive. My acting wasn't collaborative. It was competitive. It was a sport. And my life was this way. And this is what created the insecurity and the jealousy that put hands on this woman. The man that was involved in that relationship was constantly comparing himself to other people. And I was a dishonest person in that I was wearing this mask. You know, I've gotten cold sores my whole life. Got them from my mother. I get 2 cold sores a year when I'm stressed out or I'm sick. I never told any of my sexual partners about getting cold sores. Never. And that's something, when you talk about like, how do you talk to these people who you done fucked over? Like, there's certain shit you can't clean up.
Yeah.
You know, you can't make amends for permanent damage like that, you know? And so my daughter now has become this opportunity for me, you know, and every woman in my purview has become an opportunity for me to be like a stand-up dude. I used to open doors for women. I used to, you know, I was a good dude that way, but it was almost performative. It was almost like, I'll do this good thing so you can think I'm a good dude. But like in my own private life, when the doors were closed, I never told any woman I had cold sores, you know? And so that's deplorable behavior, you know? When a woman would like me, it felt like so fucking foreign that I didn't want to fuck it up. And I always thought that a woman being into me was tied to this business. So like I think about why the business and the industry was so important for me, and it really has almost very little to do with the craft itself and the spiritual nature of what the craft can be. For a great swath of time, it had to do with, this is how I define myself. This is where I build my ego so that I can go in and pursue these things that will, these feelings that will absolve me from the very real feeling that is continual loneliness and the feeling of being not enough and the feeling of constantly comparing yourself to other people. And what that does in a relationship is it makes you controlling and fearful and manipulative. To not tell somebody you get cold sores twice a year is a heinous manipulation, you know? But I never came up with a dude who was like, hey, this is how you navigate that situation. Right. Nobody hit me to game like, hey, bro, you know, if you're really in love, you can have open conversations about uncomfortable shit and really get to like another kind of connection you don't even know about.
Or if somebody was trying to tell you weren't in a place to receive it anyways. I mean, maybe somebody tried.
I wasn't.
You know? And I get, look, you said, whether it was through, you know, drinking or whatever the fuck it was, that you hurt people that are close to you.
Yeah.
That really resonated with me, man. And I'm just wondering.
I mean, people who put their whole shit on the line to like bring me back from the fire. You know, Alma Harrell is a great example of a person who, she took a gamble on me. You know, I was in rehab when we started having a conversation. I got arrested in Georgia for fighting with a cop, wound up in rehab, and didn't hear a damn thing about God, spirituality, personal growth, accountability. My whole, as soon as I got to rehab, was let me get back to this hustle. So I started writing a script in rehab. That's how fucking mad I was. I wasn't listening to no therapy. I had been therapized my whole life that it felt like, you want me to focus on the problem? Well, how am I gonna hack this focusing on the problem thing, and how am I gonna find my way back to this fucking hustle so I can get back to my ego? Because really all I cared about was my ego. I didn't give a fuck about getting well. You know, it was all about get well for you, get well for the camera, get well. And so, you know, Honey Boy was born in this kind of toxic milieu of false recovery, masked as some kind of like upliftive product, and she was in on it because she thought that it was, I mean, I don't know what her motivations were, but it felt like she was doing kind of what you're doing here. When the conversation first started with Alma, it was like, man, we got to get to the root of what the fuck is going on here. You know, something wrong with you. You know, let's get well.
It was out of love. It was out of love. Like, y'all fucked with each other. You made stuff together. I love you. What can we do?
It wasn't let's build a product. It wasn't fetishizing product when we first. She didn't. It wasn't like I was in an environment where she's like,
Academy Award.
Yeah, let me go hit you up for a script idea. It wasn't that. She hit me up like, hey, I'm in the same. I'm living a principled life also. Maybe you should get involved in this thing. And immediately I was on a, you know, as a matter of fact, you know, here's a fucking 60-page monologue I wrote about my dad while I was doing this fourth step, you know. And right away, it was almost like I manipulated her into directing this movie. And then that put me in a situation where I was even sicker. Because then self-will is run riot in full. Because now I'm at Sundance. We just done one Sundance. And I'm like thinking that I can like, that I'm the ultimate manipulative master. And I was telling other people who would come to me after seeing that movie, asking me about how to help, and I would tell them, well, you just got to paint with your pain, you know, and all this fucking nonsense. It just wasn't. I had no spiritual life, none.
The fact that your spiritual life at that point was bankrupt, and the fact that came out of a transactional, less than weak part of you, if that's what you're saying here. Is it still possible that through the art that you made, that it inspired people or helped people? It still could have.
Oh, I know it has.
Fair enough. Okay.
And I don't think, and I don't want to get too spiritual, too much God talk in here, because I know that it landed like on deaf ears when I wasn't ready. But God uses people in many ways, and I've interacted with people, and Alma has interacted with people who that movie has had a hand in helping them find their way back to the route. You know, and that's very fulfilling. So I can't deny that craft and art is a huge instigator in people. You know, when you think about Catholicism in full, you know, beauty is a huge part of the religion.
That's right.
Art has a huge hand
Music,
in
painting,
evangelizing people and bringing them to God. And
absolutely. But there's also been some real toxicity and some morally bankrupt things that use that art in order to draw people in for own personal gain and for weak parts of those people.
Which is where I was.
And I think, man, it's when I think about you, you have this ability to inspire and to galvanize and ignite people. You can make people feel enormously strong and powerful and joyous. I've also seen you humiliate people.
Yeah.
I've seen you completely destroy the joy in an environment.
Yeah.
And that's and I think these things, they're cousins, man. Like, you cannot have one without the other, and it is a constant. I think it is a constant work. It is a constant mission. If you're going to try to walk the path where you're trying to live for positivity, you're trying to bring people up, because that doesn't go away. That shit will never ever go away.
For
and
sure.
It's constant work.
Yeah.
And the thing that I was tripping out on is you saying how you hurt people close to you. That's also I we've talked about it. I definitely understand what it's like to hurt people. I've hurt people. I've hurt people in ways I'm disgusted with myself for what I've done.
Yeah.
I haven't hurt people that are close to me. I can't imagine what that's like. And I want to know, first, I guess I want to know, how does that feel? Do you know that you're doing that while you're doing it? And what is the realization? Like, what does that feel like to know you've done that, or to know you're doing that?
Yeah, I mean, so there's two perspectives on it. There's where I am now and who I was then.
Yeah.
And I've had to do a lot of inventory on what was motivating this perspective.
Yep.
I come from, like, and this isn't a boohoo shit either, but I know abandonment. Mm-hmm. I know, like, deuces. And I would test relationships, and as a way of, like, finding a barometer. I'd also, I would hurt people just out of straight selfishness. No, like, there's no intellectual facet to it. Just the fact that, the fact that I cheated on every woman I'd ever been with. The fact that directors who put me on, who took me from nothing and put me on, I eviscerated in public life. Even on set, when I would sense weakness in another person on the other side of a scene, I would lean in. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't try to uplift nobody. I would try to lean in. And it was this constant trying to define myself in the world. It has to do with not feeling enough. All of this comes from fear. Mm-hmm. Just when I didn't understand masculinity in full. Mm-hmm. What I know masculinity to be now is stability. Mm-hmm. You can't really have stability if you're running shit. Because if you're just a dude, like, you know how infinitesimally fucking small we don't even know how deep Lake Michigan is. Right. What are you really running? Right. You're running nothing. Right. And so this idea that if you're bossing your life, you're always going to be in a tremendous amount of fear. Mm-hmm. And that
in
fear,
denial, right? In denial, it's just not real.
Yeah, you have to. You have to deny anybody else's God. You have to deny God in full, and you have to. You fall into this, like, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens hole, where you're trying to intellectualize everything and rationalize everything.
You're fragile, dude. We're all fragile.
But then you get caught up with, like, I hung out with, like, philosophers and shit. I would backstop all my shit with, like, these philosophies, and, like, fucking words. Play these word spells on people, and was using, like, performance art to, like, create this. Running word spells. Just a bunch of fucking nonsense. Really, at the end of the day. That all had to do with the same thing that hurt people. It was all about, my propulsion system was fucked. Mm-hmm. My motivations behind the way I was living my life was wrong. Mm-hmm. I had to get a new propulsion system. I wasn't looking at life like, how can I be useful to other people? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I wasn't looking to be of service to nobody, even including a director. I listen to Ethan Hawke sometimes, do interviews about how he looks at the craft, and he's always talking about, like, my job is just to be in service of the director, and that's, like, foreign to me. Yeah. I remember being in service to a director and getting fucked over. I remember doing movies with certain dudes who, like, led me down a weird path, and looking back at the project thinking, like, nah, man, I was right all along. You were wrong. And then I stopped listening to any kind of director, and that innocent dude who came into the industry with all this wild, wide-eyed wonderment, that disappeared pretty quick. And then it became like, I I got around some dudes who I saw work a very specific way, and I thought the answer to this having to rely on the infallible man that is the director is you just don't listen to the director and you just do your own shit, because trust your instincts, buddy, because you're God. I remember calling my manager and saying, like, what do you mean? I'm God. You know, this is really where I was at, because I thought my craft was God. I thought love, art, and God all meant the same thing to me.
And to somebody who's because I understand you're looking at it from two different perspectives. It's where you're at now and where you were going through it. So for somebody who may be going through that right now, or for somebody who, you know, maybe is close to somebody who is going through that, were there ever times of empathy? Were there ever times of realization? Were there ever times of shame when you're like, fuck, I just hurt that person? What would you say to that dude?
I'll tell you like this. I remember being in Georgia when I was doing this movie with this kid, Zach. You were there for part of it.
Yeah.
And I remember getting arrested.
Yeah.
And I remember getting out of jail the next day, and I remember sitting down with Zach, and there were moments of like lucid articulation from this man. And this happened to be one of them. And he said, you know, this is my one shot. You make movies all the time, but this is my one shot. And you're ruining it for me. And to say that you don't feel that when it lands is not true. I felt it deeply. But it's what you do with that feeling. You know, do you change? And I didn't. You know, I would always I always had an inch left. I always had some fucking wiggle room. Every time I would fuck up, there was always some wiggle. There was always a Brad Pitt on the phone. There was always some Sundance award.
Some next project.
There was always Alma. There was always there was always wiggle room to get back into ego. And this time, there wasn't no wiggle room. That's why I attribute this woman with saving my life, because she destroyed any route towards that wiggle.
That's real.
It is real.
Rock fucking bottom.
Rock bottom. Bottom isn't when you experience the worst moment of your life.
Definitely
bottom
not.
is when you change.
That's right. It's when you actually, it's when you touch it, when you smell it, when it's right on your face,
Yeah,
and you feel it.
and
it's not about severity of what the thing is. It's about
what you do with it once it happens. So like, once it happened, I mean, when it landed, I forgot how to breathe. You know, because the subtext of the email was, your hustle's over, you know? And I forgot how to breathe. And the next thing I did after 2 minutes of sitting there, staring at a computer screen, was I went and loaded up a gun and sat at my table and was gonna kill myself. I was out of here. I didn't know what to do anymore. Like, all my ideas had failed. And I sat there for 2 minutes thinking, where's the wiggle room? I'd already used
What's my play?
Yeah, what's the play? And there were no options. It was like, there was nowhere to go. It's not like I could go outside and get a Choco Taco and chill on the, you know, people driving down the street, rolling down the window like, fuck off and die, you know? This is where I was in the early days of this shit. So I didn't even want to leave my house. And I had a woman living in my house who wasn't my wife. And I was on my way to go do some movie I didn't give a fuck about, you know, just like momentum building kind of shit, you know, movies, no intrinsic value, just like I need something on the cards, you know, for this year, I need my 2 or 3 projects, one of these things. And I felt disconnected from all of it. And I wound up getting emails from certain dudes who, like you, were still involved in my life, even when it got ugly, you know, when it got chunky. One of those dudes was Sean Penn. And Sean's like, you need to call Brolin. And I called Brolin, and he told me he was going to this meeting online. Now, the gun is loaded. Like, I haven't left my sitting position, you know? And I wound up signing on to this meeting, and I heard one of the dudes who was speaking that night say, if you're new and you just entered, you know, you don't have everything you want right now, but you got everything you need right now. Wow. Now. And he did that for like 2 minutes. And the first minute I'm thinking, you can't spend the whole rest of your share just snapping your fingers and saying now. Like, this shit is ludicrous. And I went into this judgment, which is what my alcoholism sounds like. It sounds like criticality. It sounds like judgment. And so I'm in my judgment, like, you better say, and a gun is right here. I'm like, you better say something that's really gonna get me the fuck out of where I'm at. And after 2 minutes, like, I felt like a giggle start to rise inside of me, and I felt something like presence. I stopped thinking about the email, stopped thinking about my hustle. The gun almost disappeared, and it was like I'm sitting here on this Skype call, and I'm present for the first time in my life. And I wound up writing the dude in the chat box like, hey, bro, you know, I'm on the verge, you know, I'm about to kill myself. He's like, oh, okay, cool, call me tomorrow. Just like throwaway. You know, and I needed that. I had been enabled for so long in my life that if it was going to be me walking into this program and having a bunch of dudes pat me on the back like, hey, man, welcome home. We're glad you're here. I'd have been out again because then it would have been more wiggle room. But the guy that I wound up running into was not having it. And he said, hey, man, meet me on the beach tomorrow. And I wound up here at Tower 10, and he said, I need you to get on your knees. And I'm like, I'm not getting on my knees. He's like, cool, deuces. He started walking away. I'm thinking, oh, fuck. But it also reified this, like, you don't care. Like, you care, but not in that way. You know, you're not going to pat me on my back. And I said, okay. I was so willing at this point because I was in so much fucking pain. And he said, get on your knees. And I get on my knees. He gets on his knees with me. So right away, it's no longer like this power play. We're like collaborating in this. And he says, I need you to stop the waves. And I'm like, man, listen, this Dr. Quinn medicine woman version of this shit ain't gonna work with me. You know, like, I get how this goes. He's like, you're either gonna write what happens or you're gonna do a bunch of shit that you don't believe in so that your life changes. Because your issue is that you need to rationalize everything. And you're out of options, son. Like, what? If not this, what? And he was right. And so I started saying, you know, stop waves. And he's like, louder, man. Stop waves. And he got up off of his knees and he started walking away. And I looked back and he's like, nah, keep going. And he's like, keep saying it again. I say, stop waves. He's like, louder, bro. They're all the way over there. You're all the way over here. Stop them waves, man. And now I'm yelling and I'm having like an emotional, it almost feels performative now. Yeah, now I'm like back in my bag, back to like the manipulating, hustling, like wiggle room finding. Yeah, watch this. Boom. Let me, and then I'm crying and I'm stop waves. You know, like I'm in the middle of like the greatest monologue of my life on this beach. You know,
Stanley Kowalski and
shit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he goes, you can stop all that, which made me like giggle, you know? I started giggling, and then he stood up and he put his hand on my left shoulder and put his hand on my right shoulder, and he said, welcome to AA. And it did something to me that felt like it felt like warrior shit. You know, it felt like man code, like G shit. It didn't feel like fluffy, cute shit, book reading, sitting in it felt like
you're on a mission.
Yeah, it felt purposeful. And it felt sexy, to be honest with you. Sexy in the way that listening to Kevin Vance feels sexy to a young man who feels like a boy. It felt so rooted. And it wasn't emotional, it wasn't performative, he wasn't trying to manipulate me, but it was kind of hokey and like the knights in shining armor kind of hokiness that like made me feel like a little kid again. And he said, I need you to go home and clear out, like clear the decks. And I'm like, nah, man, like for me, and I don't know if you felt this way, but every woman was the one for me. There was never a two. If you liked me, you were the one. Yeah. And that had to do with my insecurity and my fear. Like I didn't have there was no 2 or 3, or I was just dating like frivolously. It was always like this grand hair climbing up the super emotional, super romantic, super this fierce romance, you know, that I was searching for, desperate little boy shit. And he said, you got to clear the decks. And I'm like, I don't know if I can do that, man. You know, I feel like she's the one. And he's like giggling to himself, you know. This isn't my wife. My wife is not involved in my life at this point. And I got this one who's not the one who accused me of this shit, and she's just another person who's been trapped in my sphere of influence. And she's living in my house, and he's like, well, look, man, I'll tell you what, you know, you can keep doing it your way, or you can try some new shit, because the way that you're living, you're fucked. You're fully fucked. You're doomed, is what he said. Doomed. You're doomed. That was the word. And I flipped to this page. He made me flip to this doctor's opinion we got in our book. And in the doctor's opinion, or how our book starts, it mentions the word doomed. And he's like, this isn't like another AA guy. This is a doctor telling you you're doomed if you don't figure this shit out. And he goes, to put it in perspective, if you went to Kaiser Permanente right now, and they sat you down and put your, you know, x-rayed you and put your x-ray up on a light board, and you're looking at a picture of your clavicle, and the doctor said, hey man, you see that gray spot just above your chest cavity? You're doomed. What would happen to you was your asshole would suck, you would fucking start sweating bullets, and you wouldn't be thinking about the job that you got to get to, or the girl you got to hold on to, or where you're going to go for Father's Day, or you immediately, your whole life would get very small, and the only rational response to that kind of information is, well, what do I do? And if I told you to staple a dog's dick to your fucking chin and walk up and down the street picking a cigarette butts, you would do it. You wouldn't ask me why or whether you believe in it or nothing. You go look for a dog, you know? And so that made sense to me. He puts me in a car. He says, I need you to listen to this Sandy Beach tape. Now, at this point in my life, like I'm like barely hanging on. And I'm using this woman like drugs. You know, every time I need validation, I'm with this woman, and she becomes what the mask of success that the job created for me, which kept me from like really looking at myself. She became that for me in the interim. And he's like, you got to get rid of all of it. You know, there is no more work and no more romance for a year. You're going to have to give me a year. And I'm thinking like, I'm not going to be able to pull that off, you know? And right away I'm half measuring, and this is my wiggle room. I can't. And he says, I need you to download this tape, this Sandy Beach tape. Sandy Beach is a big speaker. And in this. What
was the speech?
Yeah, the speech was, he was talking about this Chinese farmer. And this Chinese farmer and his son, they're picking radishes about the ground. And they don't own the land that they're farming off of. And they're barely subsisting. They're giving 70% to the landowner. They're living off of 30% of these radishes. Their whole financial legacy is tied up into this workhorse. And one day, and the son is really working the land because the man is too old. And one day the workhorse runs up off the hill. He just fucks off. He's up the hill. And the son runs into the house and he shakes his dad up and he says, Dad, you're not gonna believe this is a travesty. We're gonna die out here. I can't get these radishes to grow unless I turn this land over, and I can't move that hoe without the horse, and the horse is gone. This is a nightmare. And the old man, nonplussed, looks at his son. He goes, I don't know what this is, son. I don't know if it is a nightmare. I can't call it. And the son thinks his dad's out to lunch, or like ambivalent, or something's wrong, or he's too old. And a couple days later, the kid is chilling on the porch, and he sees the horse running down the hill with 50 wild stallions behind it. And they run into the paddock, and he locks the paddock, and he runs inside, and he hits the dad. He's like, man, this is, fuck radishes. Like, we're rich, you know, we're in the horse business. We're in the horse trading business now. This is a miracle, Dad. I'm gonna go tell everybody we're trading horses now. And the father looks at his son nonplussed again and says, I don't know what this is. I don't know if it's a miracle. I can't call it. And a couple more days pass, and the son's trying to break these horses down, domesticate these horses. He doesn't know anything about horses. He's a radish farmer. So, one of the horses ain't having it. And he rears up, kicks him in his leg. It's like 1400s China. There's no Kaiser Permanente. His shit is shattered. Yeah. They wrap him in some like tobacco leaves and sprinkle some mint on it. Go sit in a chair for a while. And he's wailing, and the townspeople hear about it. And the townspeople run up on the little shack and, oh man, what are you gonna do? You know, you can't domesticate these horses. You can't move this hoe. You guys are fully fucked. I don't know what you're gonna do, but this is pretty much the end, right? Like, this is a nightmare. And the old man says, I don't know what this is. He looks at his son's leg. He goes, I don't know what this is. I can't really call it. A couple more days pass. He's sitting with his son. He's trying to calm him down. He's in the middle of pain, and they hear this thunderous noise, and they look up on the ridge line, and they see 5,000 samurai on horseback running towards their little hut. And the commanding officer gets off his horse and says, give us your son. We're going to fight the Maoist army. And he looks at his son's leg, and he looks back at the samurai army, and he goes, I would, but he can't get out the chair. You know, he can't get on his, he can't. No, I can't. I would, but I can't. He's crippled. And the man gets back on his horse, and 8,000 men ride off to their death. And I listen to this tape, and I'm driving back from the beach back to where I'm living, and I get out of my car, and her bags are packed. She's on her way out. And old me would have written a haiku poem in blood and ripped my shirt off Hulk Hogan style, ran down the street and jumped over the fence, and that guy, climbed the hair up the thing.
Boombox in the air.
Yeah, boombox in the air guy. That's what I came up on. And something in me, from having heard what I just heard, what feels like this is now I can't get no lower. I hear this like I can't call it. And it becomes like this, the most diplomatic breakup I ever had in my life. And I say, what can I do? And can I get you a car? And she goes, no, don't worry about it. Go get well. And I go walk into my house and I call my dude up and I'm like, man, I think this shit is working. Like, man, this is a miracle. Like, this is the most diplomatic thing I ever. And I'm in my meeting, I'm telling all the dudes, like, I think this program's really working in my life, man. And then I got 5 days sober, and they're like, bro, I think you're pink clouding. Why don't you go to another fucking meeting, Jack? And I go on to this other meeting. Now, the whole time I've been doing this for the first 5 days, I'm on the phone with a lawyer. Like, look, this is true, but this isn't true. And I got receipts for this, and I'm not going to do this. And and I'm fighting tooth and nail. I'm on the phone with the agents, and the manager's like, listen, you got to believe me, and blah, 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 and doing that shit, right? And my sponsor's telling me the whole time, he's like, look, you're going to have to let go, dog. Like, the wind's at your back. Just let go. You know, all this, like, fighting and fuck around, like, let go, man. That's childish. And and I'm hearing him, but I'm not doing it. You know, I'm on the phone with him, and I'm hanging up the phone, and I'm fighting this thing, and I got a lawyer who's like, you need to go to rehab for anger management. Because when you go to court, no AA is gonna mean shit. You know, addicts had already juiced that route for so long that it don't mean nothing. We need clinical receipts that you're doing something, right? And I'm like, I'm not going to rehab. I've always really like cultivated my brown bagger, right? Like I don't like wearing new shoes. So this idea that I was gonna pay all this money to go pet a horse and make a friendship bracelet, it felt like, man, this shit's like, that's not sexy. You know, I found AA for real. I'm really in my shit now. I don't wanna go to this rehab. And
especially you don't want to go to it because somebody's saying that's going to get you off. It's all about the intentionality. You got to not stop. It's not about not saying the right thing because you're worried about getting in trouble. You say the right thing because you believe the fucking right thing.
It's that, and it's also I'd already done this.
Right.
I'd already gone to rehab, wrote a script, and played that game. Right, you know, and to focus.
And it didn't work. Man.
It didn't work.
It didn't work.
To focus on like my childhood trauma isn't where my problem lies. My problem doesn't lie in what people did to me.
What led you to a place with more wiggle room, and now you don't have it?
And I'm telling them, nah, I don't want to do this, you know, and I'm telling the lawyer, like, I don't want to do this, and look, yeah, this and this, and I'm fighting all this shit, and I sign on to this AA meeting. This is where I'm talking about, like, miraculous shit started to pop off in my life. And my dude sent me there because his mom was taking a chip for, like, 37 years. And the woman who took a chip right after his mother was the woman I lost my virginity to, who when I was 19 years old, I held a knife to her neck. And everything in that moment, it felt like I heard God's voice say, I'm everywhere. You can't run no more. And like my whole fucking, all my planning and like all this like, just went gone. And that really happened, you know? And I remember it vividly. And I wrote her in the chat box, like, did my dude tell you to come? Like, do you know this guy and this guy? She's like, nah, I'm in here because my people are getting chips, you know? But it's good to see you. I knew you were on your way here. You know, I hope you get it this time. And so I call my dude up and he's like, bro, you got to let go. You got to let go in full. And I want to get in my car and I drive up to Utah. And I'm in Utah for 3 months. And while I'm in Utah, they take my cell phone from me. And if they didn't take my cell phone from me, I was never going to be able to deal with what I needed to deal with. I had never known how to pray because I could never cultivate silence. I had no absence in my life. Every unforgiving minute was full of some fucking scroll or some more like ego feed, constant, nonstop rotation of this ego thing and that ego thing and just constant fulfillment of like my own personal desires. And they took my phone from me. And just for that reason alone, I would urge anybody to go this route if you're in a situation like mine, just to get the fucking phone out of your pocket. And what that gave me was time to like really assess what had been my operating systems, what had been like the motivational force in my life, which was always me. It was always ego. It was always
even the smallest decision to even go into
everything,
food, to everything you eat,
everything was ego. Everything was ego. I would eat that not because it tasted good, but because it would do this or do that, you know? And so I was there for 90 days, and in that 90 days, I made a list of all these people that I had hurt, and I mean a bunch of shit happened, but I came out and just hit the ground running, trying to make amends, trying to right these wrongs. And this is also still a part of that. There's some people who don't want to talk to me, you know, and I understand that, and so my purpose now is to be patient.
Is there an example that you can think of that you're, I don't know if the right word is proud, but if you feel good about sort of where you guys got to, or you feel good about the process in terms of making amends and there's growth?
Yeah.
Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. See, I didn't even know what amends meant, just like I didn't know what prayer was, but and let me find my way to what you just said.
Okay.
But like part of what happened to me up there was I would get quiet and I start hearing like loving thoughts for people that on paper were like villainous characters in my life. So I would get quiet and I was, you know, the first 20 thoughts is like, you got to do this, you got to do that, go here, go there, go get this, got that. And then there'd be like the 30th thought that's like, hit your dad up, tell him you love him. Now, me and my dad weren't talking, you know, and this is how my prayer life works now. It's like I get quiet, I hear loving thoughts, and then when I act on these loving thoughts, miraculous shit happens in my life. You know, I wind up in service or, and then I feel peace, but also like I get all these like incredible, like with my dad, I want to hit my dad up. Now, here's a man who I done vilified on a grand scale. I put all this shit in the street, you know? and used him, juiced my dad as like, this is the reason I'm fucking foul out here. You know, I come from this wayward upbringing, and you know, my dad is the reason I'm such a fuck up. You know, he's a biker and a wild man and a criminal and a da-da-da and abusive and I wrote this narrative, which was just fucking nonsense. My dad was so loving to me my whole life. Fractured, sure. Crooked, sure. Like wonky for sure. But never was not loving. Never was not there. He was always there. He was always there. And I done a world press tour about how fucked he was as a man. Honey Boy is basically like a big woe is me story about how fucked my father is. And I wronged him. And I remember getting on the phone with him and him being like, you know, I never read this stuff in the script you sent, you know, because I didn't put that shit in there, you know. And I was bullshitting him. I was, you know, just trying to get him to sign his fucking piece of paper. He thought I was gonna tell the story like Braveheart, you know. I was gonna, and I didn't, you know. I told the story like this dude who, and I turned the knob up on certain shit that wasn't real. My dad never hit me. Never. He spanked me once, one time. And the story that gets painted in Honey Boy is like this dude was like abusing his kid all the time. You know, my dad tried to keep me from smoking cigarettes. That's when he spanked me. He found me smoking cigarettes in the shower. He pulled me out. He spanked me. That's when he spanked me. But that wasn't my narrative because it didn't position me as like this wounded, fractured child that you could root for, which is what I was using him for. And so when I got on the phone with him, I took accountability for all that. And knew very clearly that I couldn't take it back. You know, my dad was gonna live with this certain narrative about him on a public scale for a very long time, you know, probably the rest of his life. And I done put all this shit in the street, you know. The shit that my dad got arrested for happened like 30 years ago, and I done brought it all back to the surface, you know. And I told him, you know, what I was doing, and it went just like, you know, hey man, I'm in this program, I'm learning to be a decent man one day at a time. I know I done fucked you over here. You know, I done put your shit in the street, and I know I made it harder for you to move around in the world, and I defined you as like this villainous character when really you were like an amazing dude for me in my life, and like, you know, I really look up to you and the way that you've moved through your failings and the father that you've been to me. You've been a great man to me, and if there's ever anything I can do, be it blood, counsel, money, whatever, if there's ever anything I can do to make your life better in any way, please don't hesitate to let me know. And my dad was living in Costa Rica on his fucking cocaine farm at the time, you know, and living with a bunch of Nicaraguans, and like, he said, I want to come home. And so I got him back, and when my dad was like me, I was a big pothead. And so here I am with like, I got like 10 months of sobriety. I'm about to go pick my dad up. I'm in a weed shop buying like $500 worth of weed for my dad, and sober. And I get it in the bag, and I show up at the airport, and my dad gets out, and I see my dad in a wheelchair. He's got COPD, dude could barely breathe. And I wheel his ass over to the truck, and I put him in the truck, and I give him a joint. He sparks up, and he's coughing like he's got blood and mucus coming out. He looks like totally broken, you know. And little by little, I start bringing him back to health. You know, he's got eye problems. We fix the eye problems. He found out he's pre-diabetic. He hadn't been to a doctor in like 10 years, you know. When we get to the doctor's like, if you smoke anything, you're gonna die. You got like 10% lung capacity. If you smoke anything or even around incense, you might die. And my dad in the doctor's office looks at me and goes, I think I want to get sober. In the doctor's office, he looks at me and goes, I think I want to get sober. So I bring him into my fold. I bring him into the group. He starts going all this shit with me. We get on it together. That's probably like the crowning achievement of any amends that I made. My dad's got 5.5 months now, you know, and he's working with other dudes, and like you carry the message that way. You know, for my wife, I'll be making amends for the rest of my life. You know, it's every day. You know, doing dishes is part of that amends I got to make. You know.
Cuando se denuncia un caso de abuso sexual hacia un niño o una niña, se inicia un proceso judicial largo y doloroso para la víctima. En España, el sistema judicial añade dolor a la víctima menor de edad. No tenemos una justicia adaptada a los niños y niñas. No hay espacios amigables para la infancia con un entorno seguro emocional, físico y psicológico para que las víctimas de violencia puedan prestar su testimonio de manera segura. En el 77,3% de los casos, no se procede a la grabación del testimonio y no se evita que la niña y el niño testifique presencialmente en el juicio. En muchas ocasiones, tiene que declarar delante de su agresor. El sistema judicial permite que el niño o la niña testifique en reiteradas ocasiones, provocándole un mayor sufrimiento. Todavía no hay suficientes profesionales del ámbito de la justicia, con formación especializada en derechos de infancia y en violencia contra los niños y las niñas. Es necesario crear estructuras judiciales especializadas en violencia contra la infancia.
That's going to be a lifelong journey. A lot of these amends are going to be lifelong journeys. There's amends that people don't want to talk to me